The notification on my phone blared at 4 a.m., a harsh, digital shriek that sliced through the thin, dusty silence of my sublet apartment in Queens. It wasn't the gentle, rising crow of a rooster I was used to back in Montana, nor the lowing of cattle waiting for feed. It was the sound of New York City demanding its pound of flesh before the sun even thought about rising. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the grit of too little sleep and too much recycled radiator air. I was a rancher, born and bred under the big sky, where urgent meant a calf breach in a blizzard or a wildfire jumping the firebreak. Here, in the concrete jungle, urgent meant a spreadsheet error, a coffee order that was 2 degrees too cold, or a panic attack over a font size. I reached for the phone, my calloused fingers clumsy on the sleek glass. Sender: Lilliana Morris, CFO. Subject: urgent, flight manifest discrepancy, Denver logistics. I sighed, swinging my legs out of bed. The floor was cold, the kind of damp, seeping cold that gets into your bones and stays there, a constant reminder that the heating in this building was as reliable as a politician's promise during an election year. I needed this job. My ranch, the right legacy, was exactly one payment away from a notice of acceleration. The drought last summer had killed the hay yield, the feeder cattle prices had tanked, and the bank had sent a letter stating that if I missed the next balloon payment on the 15th, they would call the entire loan due. The 15th was in 4 days. So, I had traded my saddle for a monthly MetroCard and taken a job as an executive assistant to the most terrifying chief financial officer in Manhattan. I opened the email. Jay, the travel agency messed up the booking codes for the Denver Tech Summit. We are on separate flights. Fix it. I need to brief you on the Sterling merger strategy in the air. I cannot be shouting sensitive financials across the aisle of a Boeing 737. Fix it by 6 a.m. I looked at the clock. 4:05 a.m. On it, boss, I muttered to the empty room, my voice raspy with sleep. I moved with the efficiency of a man who managed 3,000 acres of livestock. Shower. 3 minutes. Cold water to wake up the nervous system. Shave. Precise, straight razor. Checking the jawline in the cracked mirror. Dress. Charcoal suit that felt like a straitjacket. Tie knotted with a Windsor that was tighter than a lasso. I grabbed my go-bag laptop, chargers, portable hotspot, energy bars, and the physical file on the Sterling merger, and headed out into the dark. I was at her penthouse on the Upper East Side by 5:30 a.m. The doorman, a guy named Frank who liked to talk about the Knicks, nodded to me solemnly. Morning, Jay? She's pacing. I can hear the heels on the marble from the lobby. She's always pacing, Frank. It's how she generates electricity. I took the elevator up. The ride was smooth, silent, and suffocating. When the doors slid open directly into her foyer, I was hit by the scent of expensive lilies and high-octane anxiety. The apartment was white. White floors, white walls, white furniture. It looked like an operating room, waiting for a patient. Lilliana Morris was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the pre-dawn skyline of Manhattan. She was 39, impeccably dressed in a charcoal power suit that cost more than my tractor. Her dark hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She was tapping her tablet with a rhythm that matched a machine gun. You're early, she said without turning. Her voice was cool, clipped, devoid of morning grogginess. If you're on time, you're late, I drawled, setting her coffee on the console table. I made sure the coaster was perfectly aligned. Black, 2 sugars, extra shot, and I rebooked the flights. Delta, not United. But it gets us into Denver an hour earlier, which gives us a buffer against the weather system moving in from the Rockies. She turned then. Her eyes were dark circles of stress, the only crack in her armor. She looked at the coffee like it was a lifeline. Good. The budget? Under the cap. I used my points for the upgrade to first class. The travel agency wanted to charge a modification fee that would have triggered an audit flag. She paused, the cup halfway to her lips. You used your personal points? Those take years to accumulate. Company card was flagged for review by the audit committee last week, remember? Something about the London expense report. I didn't want to wake you for an override code. I kept my face neutral. Besides, points are just numbers. Getting you to Denver prepared is the job. That was efficient. Thank you, Jay. She took a sip, her shoulders dropping a fraction of an inch. We have another problem. The hotel? What kind of problem? The tech summit overbooked the Omni. They pushed our reservation to a secondary property. The bookings were consolidated. Consolidated how? I asked, already pulling up the itinerary on my phone. To save costs on the unexpected transfer, and because the inventory is non-existent, the system defaulted to a suite. One suite. She looked at me, waiting for the reaction, waiting for the awkwardness. I tried to change it, Jay. I spent an hour on the phone with the concierge. But the city is sold out. Every room within 20 miles is booked for the summit, even the motels by the airport. I kept my face neutral, scrolling through the confirmation. Historic Brown Palace Hotel. Executive suite. One suite? I repeated. 2 bedrooms? 1 bedroom, she corrected, her voice tightening. And a living area? The reservation says, pull-out capacity. I nodded slowly, putting the phone away. Well, Miss Morris, I've slept in a horse trailer during a blizzard with a sick calf. A pull-out couch at a historic hotel sounds like luxury to me. It's unprofessional, she snapped, pacing again. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble. The optics. If the board finds out I'm sharing a suite with my assistant during a merger negotiation, Chloe will have a field day. She's already gunning for my position. She'll say I'm losing my judgment. The board cares about the merger, Lilliana. The name slipped out. I usually stuck to Miss Morris's, but the tension in the room required a different kind of handling. She stiffened, but she didn't correct me. They don't care where we sleep, as long as we close the deal with Sterling. I'll take the couch. You take the room. We treat it like a mobile command center. Strictly business. I'll be the firebreak at the door. She stopped pacing. She looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time that morning. She seemed to be measuring me, calculating the risk. A firebreak, she repeated softly, keeps the heat away from the valuable timber, keeps the structure safe. I picked up her luggage 2 Toomey cases that weighed more than a hay bale. Car's downstairs. We need to move. The flight was a 4-hour drill session. While the rest of the first-class cabin sipped champagne and watched movies, Lilliana had the tray tables down, covered in spreadsheets and merger documents. Sterling is going to push back on the valuation of the R&D division, she said, pointing to a column of numbers with a manicured nail. He thinks his proprietary algorithm is worth $1 billion alone. It's not. It's unproven. It's like buying a bull based on his pedigree before you've seen his calves, I said, reading the report over her shoulder. He's selling you potential. You're buying performance. She looked at me, surprised. That's exactly it. Potential versus performance. So don't pay for the potential. Structure the deal with an earnout. If the algorithm works, he gets the $1 billion. If it doesn't, we own the code for the base price. You hedge the risk. Lilliana stared at me. Where did you learn to structure an earnout? I manage a ranch, Miss Morris. It's a business. Inventory, yield, margins, risk assessment. The numbers are smaller, but the logic is the same. If I buy a tractor that doesn't run, I don't pay full price just because it's shiny. She smiled. It was a small thing, barely a quirk of her lips, but it transformed her face. You're full of surprises, Jay. I try my best. We landed in Denver amidst a snowstorm. The pilot came over the intercom, his voice crackling. Folks, looks like we beat the worst of it, but Denver is shutting down. Heavy snow, high winds. We're going to be at the gate shortly, but expect delays on the ground. By the time we got the rental car, a massive black SUV I insisted on because I didn't trust a sedan in this weather, the snow was coming down in sheets. Visibility was near zero. I drove. Lilliana sat in the passenger seat, gripping the handle. You're driving very slow, she noted. I'm driving correctly. I said. This isn't asphalt anymore. It's ice. You rush on ice, you spin. You spin. You crash. We have a merger to close tomorrow. I intend to get you there in one piece. I navigated the highway, watching the taillights of the cars ahead sliding sideways. I kept the SUV steady, correcting the drifts with small, precise movements of the wheel. It felt good to be driving something with weight, something that required focus. It felt like home, minus the mountains. We reached the hotel an hour later. It was a grand old building, stone and brick. looking like a fortress against the storm. The lobby was chaotic, stranded travelers, overwhelmed staff. The check-in clerk looked harried. Miss Morris. Yes. We have you in the executive suite. We haven't been able to bring up a rollaway bed yet. That's fine, I said, cutting off Liliana's protest. We took the elevator up to the 8th floor. The hallway smelled of old carpet and lemon polish. I opened the door to the suite. Oh, Liliana said. It was nice. High ceilings, heavy drapes. But she was right about the consolidation. It wasn't a suite with a separate living room. It was a large room with a partition wall, an archway with no door separating the king-size bed from a small sitting area. And the sofa in the sitting area wasn't a sleeper sofa. It was a velvet fainting couch. Elegant, antique, and about 5 feet long. Liliana stood in the middle of the room, her coat dripping melted snow onto the carpet. She looked at the fainting couch. Then she looked at me. That, she said, pointing a shaking finger, is not a bed. I walked over and pressed my hand against the cushion. You can't sleep on that. You're 6'3". I fold well. Jay, this is ridiculous. We should find another hotel. There are no other hotels, I said gently. Look outside. I walked to the window and pulled back the heavy drapes. The world outside was white. The streetlights were mere halos in the swirling snow. Cars were abandoned in the street. We're stuck, I said. The city is locked down. Let's make the best of it. I'll set up the war room on the coffee table. You take the desk. We prep for Sterling. She stared out the window, the reflection of her anxious face ghostly against the storm. She let out a long breath, her posture slumping. Fine, she whispered. But boundaries. The archway is a wall. A solid brick wall. Understood, I said. Imaginary brick wall deployed. The first 2 days of the conference were a blur of adrenaline and caffeine. We were up at 5 a.m., prepping binders, reviewing slide decks, rehearsing counter-arguments. I drove the SUV through the slush to the convention center, dropping her off at the VIP entrance before parking blocks away to save the valet fees. I watched her work. She was a force of nature in the boardroom, sharp, precise, lethal. She dismantled Sterling's valuation with the precision of a surgeon. But I saw the toll it took. I saw her rub her left wrist when she was nervous. I saw the way her hands shook when she reached for water. I saw her skip lunch because her stomach was in knots. On the third night, the night before the final signing, we were back in the room. The snow had turned into a full-blown blizzard. The wind howled against the old brick of the building, rattling the window panes like an angry ghost. Liliana was pacing again. She was wearing a silk blouse and slacks, having shed the blazer, but she still looked armored. Mr. Sterling. He's cold, she muttered, wringing her hands. He's not biting on the final offer. He keeps mentioning other interested parties. He's threatening to walk. He's posturing, I said from the floor, where I was organizing the expense receipts on the coffee table. He wants you to chase him. How do you know? I know livestock, I said, not looking up. And I know men who think they're bulls. He's scuffing the dirt, making noise, throwing his weight around. He wants you to flinch. If you step back, he'll charge. You gotta stand your ground. She stopped pacing and looked down at me. Are you comparing a billion-dollar merger negotiation to a rodeo? Same dynamics, Miss Morris. Just better suits. He needs this deal more than you do. His cash burn rate is too high. He's bleeding money. He's trying to scare you into overpaying so he can save face. You read the financials that closely? I read everything. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the room plunged into absolute darkness. Oh God, Liliana gasped. The panic in her voice was immediate and sharp. Stay put, I said, my voice calm and projecting in the darkness. Don't move. I have a flashlight. I fumbled in my go bag. My fingers found the cold metal of my tactical flashlight. Click. A beam of white light cut through the room. I shone it at the ceiling, diffusing the beam so it wasn't blinding. Power outage, I said. Storm probably took a line down. Or the grid overloaded. My laptop, she said, her voice rising. The battery is at 12%. I need to review the final contract terms. Save your work. Close it. We can't do anything tonight. If you drain the battery, you won't have it for the meeting. But the presentation is tomorrow at 9 a.m., and you know it by heart? You don't need the slides. You need rest. I stood up and moved to the window. The city below was dark, save for the headlights of a few brave snowplows pushing mountains of white. The room was already getting colder. The heating system had died with the power. "It's freezing," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "Old building. Insulation's shot. It's going to get cold fast." I walked over to the bed. "We need to conserve heat." I pulled the heavy duvet off the king-sized bed. "What are you doing?" she asked, backing away. "I'm creating a microclimate," I said. "Come sit on the couch. We'll wrap up." "Jay, I'm not hitting on you, boss," I said firmly. "I'm trying to keep my employer from getting hypothermia so she can close the biggest deal of her career tomorrow." She hesitated. She looked at the dark, cold room. She sat on the fainting couch. I wrapped the duvet around her shoulders, tucking it in tight. Then I sat on the other end of the couch. I kept a respectful distance, about 6 inches of velvet between us, but I pulled the edge of the duvet over my legs. We sat in the dark, the flashlight casting long, strange shadows on the walls. The wind howled outside. "Tell me about the ranch," she said suddenly. Her voice was small in the dark. "What? You never talk about it. But you have a photo in your wallet. I saw it when you paid for the coffee yesterday." I hesitated. I didn't talk about the ranch because it hurt too much. It felt like talking about a dying relative. "It's big," I said softly. 3,000 acres. Rolling hills, sagebrush, mountains in the distance that look like jagged teeth. It's been in my family for 4 generations. My great-grandfather homesteaded it, built the first cabin with his own hands. "And you left it to carry my luggage?" "The drought was bad last year," I admitted, staring at the beam of light on the ceiling. "Feed prices tripled. Water rights got cut. I took a bridge loan to cover the overhead. But the interest, it ate me alive." "The ranch doesn't pay a monthly salary, Lilliana. It eats money, and the bank just sent a notice of acceleration. I have 4 days to clear the balance, or they seize the deed. So, you're here for the money? I'm here for the ranch. Everything I do is for the ranch. Every coffee I pour, every flight I book, it's a bale of hay. It's a vet bill." She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing, steadying. "I grew up in a trailer park in Ohio," she whispered. I turned my head. I couldn't see her face clearly, just the outline of her profile. The polished, terrifying CFO. Admitting this? "My mom cleaned houses," she continued. "She scrubbed floors for people who didn't even know her name. I swore I would never scrub a floor for anyone else. I would be the one hiring the cleaners. I would be the one writing the checks." She pulled the duvet tighter. "That's why I'm so hard on the budget. That's why I need this merger. If I fail, if I show weakness, I feel like I'm sliding back to that trailer. I feel like the ice is cracking under my feet." "You're not sliding anywhere," I said, my voice low and fierce. "You're the smartest person in any room you walk into. You built yourself from the ground up. That's stronger than any foundation money can buy." "You think so?" "I know so. I've seen you work. You don't just know the numbers. You know the story behind them. You fight for your company like I fight for my land." She shifted. She looked at me. In the dim light, her face was soft, unguarded. The armor was gone. "Thank you, Jay. Don't mention it. Get some sleep." She leaned her head back against the cushion. "Jay? Yeah? You can. You can move closer. It's really cold." I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the line, the imaginary brick wall. I shifted an inch, then another. Our shoulders touched. The contact was electric. It wasn't sexual, not explicitly. It was survival. It was warmth. It was 2 lonely people, huddled against the storm. I could smell her perfume, vanilla and steel. I could feel the tension leaving her body as she leaned slightly against me. I didn't put my arm around her. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I was the firebrake. I had to hold the line. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a hired hand. I felt like a partner. The power came back on at 4 a.m., blasting the overhead lights and the TV with a jarring screech. We jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Lilliana scrambled up, smoothing her hair, her face flushing red. We have to get ready." "Right," I said, standing up and rubbing my stiff neck. "Meeting. I'll go get coffee from the lobby if the machines are working." We fell back into our roles. assistant, boss. But the air in the room was different. It was charged. The meeting went perfectly. Lilliana crushed it. She stood her ground with Sterling, called his bluff on the valuation with a cool confidence I hadn't seen before, and closed the deal by noon. We were celebrating in the hotel bar that evening. The storm had passed, leaving the city buried but beautiful. To success, she said, clinking her wine glass against my beer bottle. To the ranch, I added. Her smile faltered slightly. Right, the ranch. Excuse me, a voice interrupted. We looked up. A young woman in a sharp red suit was standing there. It was Chloe, the VP of marketing from the New York office. The rival. She had arrived late, due to the weather. Lilliana, I didn't know you were here. We made it in early, Lilliana said, her mask sliding back into place instantly. And Jay, Chloe said, looking me up and down with a smirk. Did you enjoy the suite? I heard the hotel was fully booked. Rumor has it there was quite a squeeze on rooms. Lilliana went pale. Her hand tightened on her glass. We made arrangements. I bet you did. Chloe laughed, a cold sound. Separate rooms, I hope? HR would have a field day if they knew the CFO was sharing a duvet with her executive assistant. It might look like favoritism or something else. I stood up. I didn't let my anger show. I let my rancher calm take over. I stepped slightly in front of Lilliana, blocking Chloe's line of sight. Actually, Chloe, I said, my voice low and carrying the weight of absolute authority. I slept in the lobby. Miss Morris took the room. I was on security detail because of the sensitive nature of the merger documents. With the power outage and the lack of secure safes, we couldn't risk the physical copies of the contract being left unguarded. Standard protocol for high-value assets. Chloe blinked. Her smirk faltered. Oh, I didn't realize. Now you do, I said. Miss Morris prioritized the integrity of the deal over her own comfort. That's why she's the CFO. And if you'll excuse us, we have a flight to catch. I placed a hand on the small of Lilliana's back professional, guiding and led her out of the bar. We walked to the elevator in silence. The doors closed, sealing us in. You lied, she whispered. I managed the optics, I said. It's part of the job. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. Is that all this is? A job? Am I just an asset you're protecting? I looked at the floor numbers ticking up. 4, 5, 6. I protected the deal, I said softly. I protected your reputation. Because that's what you hired me to do. I turned to her, my voice rough. If I start acting like anything other than your employee, I can't do my job. And right now, you need the employee more than you need the man. She flinched, just slightly. It was the truth, but it was a cold one. We flew back to New York in silence. The tension was thick enough to choke on. I sat next to her in first class, but we might as well have been on different planets. When we got to her apartment, I carried her bags up. I set them down in the white foyer. Jay, she said as I turned to leave. Wait. It's late, Lilliana. I need to talk to you. About the ranch. About the payment. I froze. My hand hovered over the doorknob. What about it? I ran a background check on you when I hired you. I know about the foreclosure notice. I know the date. It's next week. My face burned. The shame was hot and sharp. That's private. It's public record. Jay, how much do you need? I don't want your money. It's not charity. It's a bonus. For the merger. For saving me in the storm. For lying to Chloe. I earn my way, I said. My voice hard. I don't take handouts from my boss. I sold my truck. I sold my prize saddle. And I'm working 18-hour days to pay this debt myself. But you don't have to. I can write a check right now. And then what? I turned to face her. Then I belong to you? Just another acquisition? Another asset you managed to secure? No, then you're free. No, Lilliana. Then I'm kept. I'm not just your boss anymore, am I? Aren't you? She looked at me, helpless. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to not be the boss. I don't know how to fix things without money. Then learn, I said. Figure it out. Because I can't be the one to teach you. I have to go. I walked out. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, beat 9. I was back at the office, packing my desk. I had resigned. The ranch was gone anyway. The payment deadline had hit while we were in the air, returning from Denver. The wire transfer I attempted from the airport lounge had been flagged for suspicious activity because of the location mismatch, and by the time I cleared it, the bank's automated system had triggered the default clause. The notice of acceleration was in my inbox. I was going back to Montana to salvage what I could, maybe sell the herd before the sheriff arrived. I looked up. Lilliana was standing in the doorway of my cubicle. She wasn't wearing her power suit. She was wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater. She looked soft. "I'm busy, Miss Morris. Just clearing out. Please, just listen." She handed me a thick envelope. "Severance?" I asked bitterly. "Open it." I opened it. Inside was a legal document, a deed transfer, and a banknote. "What is this?" "It's the deed to the Wright Legacy Ranch," she said. I stared at her. My hands started to shake. "How?" "I liquidated my stock options," she said quietly. "My personal portfolio. I didn't use company money. I bought the note from the bank before they could put it on the auction block. I own the mortgage." I felt a surge of rage so pure it nearly blinded me. "You bought my home? So now you're my landlord? You did exactly what I asked you not to do." "Read the addendum," she said. "Please." It wasn't easy. I had to get board approval to liquidate that much equity without triggering an insider trading flag. I had to sign an NDA about the transaction. I flipped the page. Transfer of ownership to J. Wright, effective immediately, upon signature of Partnership Agreement B. "What is Partnership Agreement B?" "I bought a property," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "In Montana, adjacent to your land. The Miller place, 500 acres. Miller sold?" He swore he'd never sell. "He sold. To me. Using my own money. I want to build a retreat center. For burnt-out executives. A place to unplug. To reconnect. I need a manager. Someone to run the land, handle the livestock, teach people how to listen to the silence. You want me to run a dude ranch? I want you to be my partner," she said. "The land is yours. The job is yours. The salary from the retreat center covers the buyback cost of the note over 5 years. It's a business deal, Jay. You keep your dignity. You keep your ranch. I get a manager I trust. And I get a sanctuary." I looked at the deed. I looked at her. She was offering me a lifeline, but she had wrapped it in a contract so I could accept it. She had listened. She had understood the pride, and she had sacrificed her own financial safety net to do it. "Why?" I asked. "Because you were right," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't want to slide back to the trailer, but I don't want to live in a glass tower anymore either. I want to see the stars." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, clear plastic sleeve. Inside was a piece of paper. It was wrinkled, stained with a ring of coffee, and smoothed out with care. "And I found this," she said, "in the trash can in the hotel room. You crumpled it up?" It was a draft of a letter I had written her that night in the dark, on hotel stationery, but never sent. "Lilliana, you are the strongest thing I've ever seen, but even steel breaks if it gets too cold. Let me be the fire break. Let me hold the line for you." "You kept it," I said, my throat tight. "I didn't just keep it," she whispered. "I laminated it." She stepped closer. We were in the middle of the office, fluorescent lights humming overhead, but it felt like we were back in that hotel room, wrapped in a duvet, the rest of the world shut out. "I booked a flight," she said, "to Bozeman. Tomorrow. One way." "One way?" "I have a lot of vacation time saved up. I thought I might learn to ride." I smiled. It started slow, then took over my whole face. "It's winter," I warned. "It's gonna be cold. The pipes freeze. The roads get blocked. It's not a luxury suite." "I know," she said, stepping right up to the edge of my personal space. "But I hear the manager has a really good heater." I laughed. I reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were warm. I didn't care who saw. I didn't care about HR or optics or Chloe. "Okay," I said, "but I'm driving." "Deal."